All right, first thing we're going to do is talk about problem 21.1b, and depending on how well my voice sounds at the end of this, then I'll move right into 21.2b, or maybe I'll do 21.2b tomorrow. Hopefully my voice will sound better. But anyway, and I think most of you are using the 17th edition of Williams. Some of you are using 16. I think there was a typo in the syllabus. So some of you are using the 16th edition. What I'll do for you is the problem's the same for the most part. What the writers of these books do is they change the numbers in the problems, but the concepts are basically the same. They do that so they can sell more books. So anyway, we're kind of captive to what they do. When a new edition comes up, and you've got an old edition, you just have to deal with it. The way I'll deal with it is I will put copies of the solutions to 21.1b and 21.2b out there for both the 17th edition as well as the 16th edition, so that you can look at that and not be confused by the different numbers in your book versus the 17th edition. So I know that's a little confusing, but I will identify the solution as 16th edition, so you know that you should look at that and compare that with what we did in this lecture, because really I'm lecturing out of the 17th edition. All right, so let's look at 21.1b. Swirl Incorporated designs and manufactures fashionable women's clothing. For the coming year, the company has scheduled production of 50,000 silk shirts. Budgeted costs for this product are as follows. So you've got your unit costs for the production of 50,000. You've got the total cost for production of 50,000, and it's broken down: variable manufacturing costs, variable selling costs, fixed manufacturing costs, fixed operating costs. The management of Swirl is considering a special order from Discount Fashions for an additional 18,000 skirts. These skirts would carry the Discount Fashions label rather than the Swirl label. In all other respects, they would be identical to the regular Swirl skirts. Although Swirl regularly sells its shirts to retail stores at a price of $180 each, Discount Fashions is offered to pay only $55 per. Oh, that's skirts, not shirts, sorry. Skirt per skirt. However, because no sales commissions would be involved with this special order, Swirl will incur variable selling expenses of only $5 per unit on these sales rather than the $15 it normally incurs. Accepting the order would cause no change in the company's fixed manufacturing costs or fixed operating costs. Swirl has enough plant capacity to produce 70,000 skirts per year. That's a lot of information, right? All right, let's see if we can weed through this. A, using incremental revenue and incremental costs, compute the expected effect of accepting this special order on Swirl's operating income. Okay, so we're simply going to take the incremental revenues and subtract the incremental costs to figure out what our hopefully expected increase in operating income will be. Okay, so let's put this under accepting special order. So first, you're going to figure out your incremental revenue. Well, it's $55 that they're willing to pay per skirt times the 18,000 units. And so that equals $990,000. So that's going to be reduced by your incremental expenses or costs, if you will. You have variable manufacturing costs, that remains the same at 40 per unit. I mean, if it changed, they would tell you in the problem, right? But variable manufacturing costs haven't changed here. It's still $40 per unit times the number of units. And so that is $720,000. And then on top of that, as the problem indicates, variable selling expenses, not manufacturing, but selling expenses or costs are not 15 per unit, but this special order is only going to incur selling costs of $5 per unit. So you take that and multiply that times the 18,000. And so that is 90,000. So 990 less 810 is going to be an expected increase in operating income of $180,000. Okay, so the question is, should we accept this special order? And at least from a numbers standpoint, the answer is yes, absolutely. We should accept the special order. But is that all there is to it? And the answer is no. You have to consider non-financial considerations, issues, because this could really backfire on this company. And so B says, briefly discuss any other factors that you believe Swirl's management should consider in deciding whether to accept the special order. Include non-financial as well as financial considerations. Well, certainly you can't, everything ties back to the financial almost. You could almost have a situation here where, if they look the same, but one's priced lower, same quality, same everything. Well, if you're an astute consumer, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to go buy the discount fashions skirt rather than the more expensive, probably twice as much or more expensive Swirl skirt. It's the same skirt, same quality. I mean, certainly some people are going to have, the snob appeal of wanting to buy the more expensive skirt, but I mean, if you can get past that, as most consumers do, especially these days, they're going to buy the cheaper skirt. And so you're going to have a decrease in sales of the regular skirts that you produce. Lower demand. And so you could have difficulties in meeting your sales forecast for the regular skirts. Now I'm just talking about these, so but that would be one consideration. You're almost cannibalizing your regular sales. Two, might the fact that selling this cheaper skirt, much cheaper skirt, you've created competition with yourself and possibly lessened the reputation of your own product. So, having your customers and potential customers think that, well, if it's cheaper, then it must not be good quality in the first place. You're just jacking up the price. So reputation is certainly a problem. They might think it's just substandard product being jacked up for profit's sake. Notice that the sales price of the special order is so low that Discount Fashions could retail the skirts at much less, and I've indicated this already, the wholesale cost of the regular skirts. And so the other thing to consider here is, Swirl's manufacturing these skirts and selling to retail outlets. How are they going to feel if they're paying this more expensive price when they could go out and buy the Discount Fashions skirt, same skirt? So I mean, this could create problems with your retail outlets, not just their customers. Notice that if they accept this order, in their regular orders, they're producing 50,000. If they accept this order, that'll be an additional 18,000, so they would be producing 68,000 skirts. Notice that their capacity is 70,000. So one concern is what happens if demand for their regular skirts from their retailers increases. They're not going to have hardly any capacity for a big demand. So they could they would not have the ability to meet any additional demand, is what it boils down to. Note that the contribution margin per unit for the special order skirts is not that good. It's the $55 selling price minus the $45 it takes to manufacture these goods. And so that's only, from a percentage standpoint, contribution margin unit of 18.2%. There you take the 55 minus 45, and divide that into the total selling cost. That's only 18.2% contribution margin per unit for the special order stuff. Now for the regular stuff, the regularly manufactured stuff, it's 180 minus 55. That's the variable manufacturing cost of 40, and add in the variable selling expenses of 15 in your book for manufacturing the 50,000 units. And so that is 125 over the 180 selling costs. So that's 69.4% contribution margin per unit. And as we saw in the lecture, you should always, if given the chance, if you know the market will bear it, sell the product that gives you the highest contribution margin per unit. And so here, certainly that's a consideration. There's a vast difference between the contribution margin per unit of your regular orders versus the special order. What might the special order do? Let's think about some positive things, because mostly we've been talking about negative things of this special order. There are a few positives, not many. certainly you have an increase in operating income of $180,000. What happens if you have a decrease in the regular orders, not caused by this special order? What might you have to do with the people who manufacture these goods? Well, you'd probably have to lay them off. So one positive thing might be that the special order could, if it's always there, at least you know that you don't have to lay off people. And another one, I don't know how important this is. The book says this may be the beginning of a long-term relationship with Discount Fashions in which Swirl can use its excess capacity to produce a variety of private label merchandise. May be true. I think the problem is just the vast difference in what they could sell it for versus what what they could sell their regular product for versus what the special order they can sell it for. It's just such a vast difference. It might tend to cannibalize their regular sales. There's certainly more, I think, more negatives than positives. This could really blow up in their face. So just some things to consider. I'm not saying there's any right answer to be. Certainly, if you have something that you think of that I haven't talked about, that's certainly fine too, as long as it's not too far out there. So that is problem 21.1b. I don't think my voice is going to get any better, so let's just go ahead and do 21.2b. Yikes, bent paper. Okay, so 21.2b. And so this is a make or buy problem. And so it says Matchless Corporation manufactures radios that it uses in several of its products. Okay, so it's a component of other products. Management is considering whether to continue manufacturing the radios or to buy them from an outside source. The following information is available. The company needs 20,000 radios per year. The radios can be purchased from an outside supplier at $50 per unit. The unit cost of manufacturing the radios is $85. So they could buy it for what looks like a lot less, at least on the surface, compared to their unit cost of manufacturing at $85. And so there you have the numbers: direct materials, direct labor, and then factory overhead, both variable and fixed. Discounting the manufacturer of radios will eliminate discontinuing the manufacturer of radios will eliminate all the raw materials and direct labor costs, but will continue only 80% of the variable factory overhead costs. more, if the radios are purchased from an outside source, machinery used in the production of radios will be sold at its book value. Accordingly, no gain or loss will be recognized. The sale of this machinery would also eliminate $5,000 in fixed costs associated with depreciation and taxes. No other reductions in fixed factory overhead will result from discontinuing the production of radios. So it says, prepare a schedule in the format illustrated in Exhibit 21-6 of the text to determine the incremental cost or benefit of buying the radios from the outside supplier. On the basis of this schedule, would you recommend that the company manufacture the radios or buy them from the outside source? All right, so let's set up our process here. Make, buy, and then here you're going to have your incremental analysis. And so the first thing we're going to do is calculate our manufacturing cost for the 20,000 radios. So manufacturing costs for 20,000 radios. And that includes the direct material of 400,000, the direct labor of 500,000, factory overhead is where we have some changes. I mean, if you make it, it's going to be 350,000, right? This is just numbers right out of the book. So variable, that's this number. Fixed, this is factory overhead, not fixed overhead. This is variable overhead, 350, fixed overhead of 450. So we're just taking the numbers right down the row. This is 1,700,000. Okay? Oops, left something out. Get my handy dandy whiteout here. This is why Excel spreadsheets are so good. Although you can do it by hand. Not a problem, as long as I can read it. As long as it's not worse than my handwriting, I can read it. And so the thing I left out was and I'll eliminate this line as well if I can. There we go. Luckily you don't have to blow on this stuff, but mine's probably old, so it's not working exactly as it should. So the line I left out is the following. Cost to purchase $20,000 radios at $50 each. Well, if we're making them, that number in this column is 0, right? So we come down here and we have our totals. And of course, that's where this number that I wrote should be. Here in the make column, it's $1,700,000. Okay? Well, if we buy the radios, what changes in these numbers over here? The book says that this number does not change, this number does not change, this number changes to what? Well, this number is eliminated. It says by 80%. And so only 20% of this number remains, or $70,000 to buy the product. They'll still have, you only eliminate 80% of your variable factory overhead by buying the product. And so 20% of $350 is $70,000. You're still going to have $70,000 of variable overhead if you buy the product, is what they're saying. Fixed overhead says that they'll only eliminate of the 450,000 in fixed overhead, they'll only reduce that by $5,000 if they buy the product. And so this number here is now 445. Okay? And then of course, if you buy the product, the cost to purchase 20,000 units at $50 each is $1 million. So add that up, you get what? 1,515,000. So what you're going to do is subtract the differences here, and that'll be your incremental amounts. Certainly here, nothing changes. Nothing changes here, so we just carry that over. Difference here is, and again, the incremental analysis is the difference of the two options. Here, variable cost, if we make it, is $350,000. If we buy it, it's still going to be $70,000, 20% of this number. So the difference in our incremental analysis is the difference between these two numbers are $280,000. And make sure you get, if you write this out, make sure you don't do like me and give yourself plenty of room. The difference here is only $5,000. And of course, here the difference is a negative $1 million. And so if you add 400 plus 500 plus 280, what's that? 1,180,000, 1,185,000 minus 1 million is $185,000. And that's a positive number. So I almost started to negative it. Don't do that. If the sum of these numbers is greater than this number, the cost to purchase, what should we do? Well, it means that the expenses, these costs, are greater than the cost to buy, right? Now, if these figures totaled up were less than this, this would be a negative number, right? But since it's a positive number, positive in this case is actually not good, because it's the costs, these things up here, to make the product are greater than the cost to buy. So the answer is, in the make or buy question, without considering any other considerations, financial or non-financial, is that we should buy the product, not make it. Now going to B says, assume if the radios are purchased from the outside source, the factory space previously used to produce radios can be used to manufacture an additional 8,000 timepieces. Timepieces? Per year. Thought they made radios. Oh, well, anyway. Timepieces have an estimated contribution margin of $15 per unit. The manufacturer of the additional timepieces will have no effect on fixed factory overhead. Would this new assumption change your recommendation as to whether to make or buy the radios? In support of your conclusion, prepare a schedule showing the incremental cost or benefit of buying the radios from the outside source and using the factory space to produce additional timepieces. Okay, so we'll put this under the heading Effect of alternative use of factory space. And so the first thing we have to consider is the incremental benefit of buying the radios versus manufacturing them. Well, the benefit is the difference between the cost that we can incur if we make it, could incur if we make it, versus the cost of buying these radios. And so that's $185,000 benefit if we buy them. And so to that, we're going to add the contribution margin of this new product that we can produce because of freed up factory space. And so we'll put contribution margin of alternative use of factory space. Well, that number is the 8,000 units of timepieces we're going to produce times the $15 of contribution margin per unit for each timepiece manufactured. So that number is $120,000. Okay, so you add those up, and your incremental benefit of buying and using factory space for alternative use of manufacturing these timepieces is the sum of these two, or $305,000. Okay? Now, while the question doesn't ask this, again, here, make or buy decisions, you have to consider non-financial as well as financial considerations or factors. What might some of those be in buying the radio versus manufacturing it yourself? Well, you have to make sure that the quality of the product, the radio you're buying, is as good as or better than the product you're making. Otherwise, if you're buying shoddy products from this other company and putting it in as a component in whatever it is you're manufacturing, you're going to have a lot of ill will. You're going to lose customers. You're going to have returns. You're going to have warranty issues. You know, those are some things to really consider. So you really have to consider the source of the radios you're buying from, and checking out to make sure that they're at least at the quality that you would make them, if not better. So, I mean, are there others? Possibly, but I mean, that's the main consideration that I can think of. But the question doesn't ask for that, but it's something to consider. All right, so if you will, do problems 21.1a and 21.2a in your book.